Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be going over the 2-1 defeat at Old Trafford against Man United at the weekend. It's going to be a fairly somber one. I think I was way more annoyed after the final whistle and sort of the rest of the day than I was yesterday, having watched back match of the day, but just kind of taking the result in. Craig, how are you feeling about it, mate?
It felt like they were there for the taking, this one. But, you know, football's a funny old game. Sometimes things don't pan out the way you expected them to. And when we went 1-0 up right on the stroke of half time, I thought, this is going to be it. This is going to be the one. And then that was one opening to the second half. Like Dan said in our little group, now I know how other teams feel when we score in the first minute.
Dan, how are we?
All good, yeah. I mean, if they weren't playing in red and they weren't playing at Old Trafford, you probably wouldn't think that they were like an elite Big Six team, the way the game panned out. And I think that's where the disappointment comes from, because I don't think necessarily they're playing like a Big Six team at the moment. So it is a bit disappointing, and it's obviously a bit of a missed opportunity in those circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also my channel will be coming out with a tactical breakdown in the week as well. The link for that is in the description. And also give us a follow on our socials, at the Eden Road on Twitter, at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. Got a few entries for Tweet of the Week this week, boys. An important win for Manchester United. They're first in all competitions since the 17th of September. Super Bees has quoted that with "I fucking hate you so much, Brentford," which I definitely share the sentiment with. I think even I said in my preview that it would be very, very Brentford of us to score 5 against Wolves and look really good, and then make United look even better, which is kind of what we did in that, especially in that second half. Another one from Charlie Trim. He's quote tweeted Transfer News Live's tweet about Thomas Frank emerging as the leading candidate to take over at Manchester United if Erik ten Hag were to be sacked. And then he said, lost on purpose so that Thomas Frank stays at Brentford, playing the long game, playing 4D chess. And then my favorite of this week, chats, I don't know what you think about this. This is Smith with a 5 in the middle of Smith, at Smith. He says, Schade is basically a speedboat without a driver. Absolutely useless. Craig, what are your thoughts on that? Speedboat without a driver. Oh, are you muted? You muted.
I think he's muted.
It's not necessarily untrue. Maybe a little bit harsh, but he certainly seems to just run himself ragged. But the problem is he's running all these directions and nothing much seems to come of what he's doing at the moment. But that will turn. That time will turn, and he will change. I hope.
Yes, let's hope for that. I think we're going to talk about Schade in a bit more detail, because there's definitely stuff to talk about with him in terms of the lineup, in terms of Wissa coming back as well. But let's just get straight into it, Dan. From the lineup, it looked like we were in a 4 in that first half. I'm not sure if it changed too much in the second, but any complaints with the lineup? I thought it was what we really expected, to be fair.
Yeah, no, not really. I was a bit surprised it was a 4, but I guess, again, that shows where we view United at the moment, in terms of if we were playing any of the other Big Six away from home, I don't imagine we would have lined up in that way. Yeah, I don't have any complaints. I think it's what we expected. I perhaps would have liked Carvalho down the middle still instead of Schade. I know Schade gives you a benefit in terms of he can get in behind, and obviously he's got that pace, but I think in terms of link-up play, I think someone like Carvalho I'd probably prefer in the middle, especially in a game where I think we would have gone into it maybe quite confident that we could maybe even win that midfield battle, play through the likes of Casemiro and Eriksen, who aren't getting any younger. And I think we would have gone into that game, quite confident that hopefully we can see quite a lot of the ball, which I think we did in comparison, at least to when we go to the other Big Six teams away from home.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially, I mean, by all accounts, in the first 20 minutes, Craig, we did look on top. I know United had a bit of spell of pressure cut right at the start of the game, but then sort of from around the end of that towards the 25-minute mark, I thought we were really, really good. I didn't actually realise how big a chance Schade was in the 3rd minute until I was watching the highlights, Craig. But how did you see those first 20 minutes?
That was a proper air shot, wasn't it, from Schade? Completely misses the ball inside the 6-yard box. Any kind of connection, you think that's nestling in the back of the net, but that just shows where he's at the minute. That just shows, if there was something to sum up where Kevin Schade is. It's that chance where he can't even touch it. We was always going to go there. We was always going to press them because that's the style of play that we seem to have this season, and it's exciting football when it works. And it did work for the majority of the first half. I thought they had a couple of chances, and I know we're going to go on to Sepp and Garnacho, and he had a few chances at the other end of the pitch, but we gave them a torrid time for that first sort of 25, half an hour, and let them back into it a little bit. And then there's the controversy around De Ligt, which I'm sure we're going to go into as well. I'm going in at half time at 1-0. I'm, like I said at the start, I'm thinking this is going to be it. But yeah, it was really good in the first half. And I thought that from that first half performance, we deserved something.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the pressing, and I do want to, because we've been so good at pressing, especially teams at maybe bar Liverpool, top 6 teams that we've gone away to, which is all of them this season. I did think at times, sort of post maybe 30 minutes down, we were a little bit disjointed sometimes. It felt like either Janet was going or Norgard was going, and there wasn't a lot of people tracking so that they could just do a kind of short diamond around the presser and then get out, and then they're kind of already 20 yards up the pitch further on. And just before we kind of get into the goals, I don't want to kind of go crazy or go into meltdown mode, Dan, over this result, because I said it in my preview, and I think we must have said it in the podcast, like, United do have world-class players. It was just a little disappointing to see. I think you mentioned the midfield in terms of Casemiro and Eriksen being their holders, to see us not kind of take advantage of that, considering how horrific Casemiro in particular has been this season. It was, so I don't really know where to put it. Like, it's not a massively devastating loss. It can happen.
I want to add to that as well. You talk about them not getting any younger, Casemiro and Eriksen. Let's not ignore the fact that Evans had Schade in his pocket for the most of the game. Yeah. And that's someone who's supposed to be we've seen the speed that Schade has. And if he's going to chase after his second touch, Johnny Evans is not going to catch him. But the problem is he did not run at Johnny Evans once in that game, I don't think. Or if he did it, I think I remember one he had a chance when in the first half, down the right-hand side away from us, or the left-hand side actually, away from the vans. He's one-on-one with Johnny Evans. And everyone can see that if he just knocks it past him and chases it, he's not going to get caught. He's not going to catch up with him. He's not quick enough to catch up with Kevin Schade. But no, he's got no confidence at the minute. Zero confidence at the minute that he can't even run at someone who's nearly 50. He's so old. And he got booked in the first half as well. And we didn't run at him. Dalot got booked. And we don't exploit these things when players get booked, like defenders. We don't exploit them. Run at these players. They can't foul you. If they foul you, they're getting sent off. But we don't exploit those. Teams do it very well against us, but we don't do it to anyone. I don't know why. That's one peeve that I have with Brentford is when a team gets a player booked, like Dalot, like Johnny Evans, playing against players like Brian Obama, Kevin Schade, Whistle when he comes on, KLP. These are players with pace that can run past people. Mm-hmm. Run past them, do it, make them be indecisive. If they foul you, they're getting sent off.
Yeah. I think KLP had a really quiet game as well.
If they don't touch you, then you're through. You know what I mean? But we don't exploit that. And I think that's something that we've never really done, never since Miles Weston played for us.
I think KLP had a really quiet game as well. Dan, before we get onto the goals, contextualise the loss. That's what I was going to sort of try and do, but contextualise the loss for me.
I think it's disappointing in the context of where Manchester United are now. I thought in the first half we could have been a bit more aggressive still. I know obviously we set up in a 4, but I thought we still seemed a bit cautious at times, and at times we still sat back maybe a bit more than I would have liked. I think all the pressure was on Man United. I think they weren't performing particularly well in that first half. They were there to be got at. They were there for the taking. Like I said at the start, if they were not wearing red and not in Old Trafford, then you wouldn't know that they were Manchester United or a Big Six side. So I thought we could have maybe just been a bit more aggressive. And I think maybe on the day we didn't shy away, but I think we were maybe a bit more cautious. And if we were playing like another mid-table side, I think Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, I think the frustration is also that we've taken the lead at City, we've taken the lead at Tottenham, we've taken the lead at United, and we've played okay in places in all of those games. Yet we've got absolutely nothing to show for it. And of course, they're tough away games, all of them, Liverpool as well. But it's a shame that we've come through those games and, we haven't done terribly in any of them, but we've got absolutely nothing to show from it. And obviously our home form at the moment is keep us in the position we're in. So I think it's a bit of a shame and it's a bit frustrating. And obviously now we've got a nice run of fixes though, where hopefully we can pick up a few more results.
I think that's key as well, because if we'd have been blown away in these away games, then we wouldn't really have any complaints. But as we've gone into the games and we've played well at Liverpool, we've played well at Spurs, we've played well at City, the expectations rise. I think that's what makes it so frustrating, because
we keep taking the lead as well.
Yeah, exactly. We take the lead, we're playing well for spells, but we don't, and ultimately we don't end up coming away with anything. But I think that's what kind of. But the thing is, at there, especially in that first 20 minutes, you could sense it in the air when we started to get on top. They went absolutely quiet, and every time we got a throw in or a corner, you could just tell they were like, "Oh crap, here we go again. There's going to be another famous loss at Old Trafford." But for whatever reason, I don't know, in that second half, we're going to get onto it. But let's go through the goals, Craig. De Ligt, I know there was a bit of controversy for our opener. I mentioned how crosses into the box were going to be dangerous all day, something that I don't think we've really capitalised on at all during the whole game. But I think Erik ten Hag, I don't know. How did you see it, Craig? I think he's chatting absolute shit, if I'm honest.
I think that De Ligt is rightly told to go off the pitch. Funnily enough, before we started this, based on feedback that we got in a previous video, I even watched the extended highlights again before this. De Ligt's got blood spouting from the top of his head. And I didn't realise it was a head injury to start with, that coming together with Schade. I thought that it was shins or something like that. He's got blood spouting down the side of his head. And then he grabs his shirt and wipes the top of his head. And everyone knows that if you've got blood on your shirt, you've got to go off the pitch to change it. Everyone knows that. So that's a stupid decision that he makes straight away in front of the referee, grabs his shirt and wipes the top of his head. He obviously has to go off. I don't understand how you can have any issues with that. I understand, actually. I do understand, actually, how you can have issues with it, because obviously it's a defender in a set-piece situation like that. But if their medical team had actually taken the time to fix it or bandage him up or anything, then we wouldn't be having this conversation, because he would have been on the pitch. He would have been bandaged up and he would have been on the pitch. But he went off 3 times. That was the 3rd time that he went off to get it sorted. And then, they just looked lost, didn't they? I don't know if you guys have watched it back, but Pinnock is so free in that penalty area. He's got the space of Old Trafford to put the ball in the top corner, in which he does. So it was a really good header. I don't think they could have any issues with it. Should have sorted it out the first time. And if it takes 3 attempts to fix it, then that's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's not even the referee's fault,
Yeah, I think he should be having a go at his medical team, because like, normally when a player gets a cut on their head, they normally bandage it up straight away and they come back onto the pitch with like a full bandage wrapped around the head. But this time I was watching it back and he only had like a plaster on the top of his head. It's like, obviously that's not going to hold if you've got an open cut on your head.
So, 3 times for them to sort it out.
Yeah, I know. I know he said that it was dry blood, but it clearly wasn't dry blood if the problem was persisting and they kept on having to take him off. Yeah. But yeah, Dan, obviously Garnacho was threatening Sepp in that first half, and I tweeted about sort of the problem that Sepp, I think, maybe got exposed for the first time this season, playing at right back against someone like Garnacho who's so direct. I was in the concourse for their equaliser, so I completely missed it because it was so early on. So having watched it back, was it preventable? And just maybe a little bit on the Garnacho versus Van den Berg dilemma that was kind of ever present throughout the whole game, Dan.
The goal itself was a pretty good goal. It's a first time finish. It was a volley, so it's not like Garnacho was holding onto the ball for very long. I think we maybe could have tracked him, and obviously, he was a bit unmarked at the back post, but I thought it was a pretty good goal. I think more generally, though, the minute that second half kicked off, we were under pressure and nearly everything went through Garnacho. And I think he is so quick and he is so tricky and he was so direct. And I think Sepp knows that he's can't match him for pace, so he can't get too tight to him. So then he kind of just jockeys him a little bit, but still he's able to come inside. Still he's able to go whichever way he wants. And, he was never really able to get to grips with him and really, close him down or have an impact on him at all. I don't even really particularly remember him tackling him. I think maybe that's where could we have switched to a back five or, at least kind of doubled up on him, after identifying that problem. I think it was a bit slow to identify it. I think, especially in the early stages of second half, he was time and time again on the ball and doing that thing. I don't know whether someone could have dropped back. Obviously, it was Brian's side. I suspect if it was on KLP's side, we may have seen him slip back like he has done in some of the away games against the Big Six to just support his fullback in terms of dealing with him, because it was clear Sepp that were struggling. So I think maybe we should have made a switch there or given him more support there. Too many times he was one-on-one and not being able to deal with it.
Yeah, I think as well, because whenever we play Arsenal, we always double up on Bukayo Saka, so it's not something that we're like averse to in terms of like identifying a danger man and doubling up on him. But Craig, you wanted to talk about fullbacks this season.
Yeah, just this game in particular. I mean, Dan's already pointed it out. We've been to City, been to Spurs, been to Liverpool, and we've done well in all of these games. And let's not ignore the fact this game only finished 2-1. We were never out of this game. We were never out of the game. But it felt like this game was the first time this season we've really been exploited for not having out-and-out fullbacks because of Garnacho on one side and Rashford on the other. I know when we went to Spurs, they didn't really have the width that they normally have when obviously they had Harry Kane with Son and Kulusevski and whoever they would have on either side of Harry Kane. Liverpool, everyone knows the front three that Liverpool have got and how interchangeable that front three is at any point. But it felt like we really, really struggled dealing with the width that Man United used. And one point that I could think of in particular was in the first half. Rashford's picked the ball up on the right wing and he's made a crossfield pass to Garnacho. Garnacho's had a chance, but he's spewed it into the stand behind the goal. Sepp is obviously trying to mark Garnacho. Even in the highlights, you can see that Sepp is about 10 yards deeper than any other defender. He's about 10 yards deeper than any other defender. And that just shows to me a player that is kind of playing out of position, a bit unnatural for him to be trying to keep up with someone who is that quick. And it felt like this was the first time we've been punished for not investing in fullbacks in the window. First time. I know it's taken 8 games, but it's if United can exploit it, and that's a bit of a disgruntled United team can exploit it. I do have concerns that other teams might be able to. But with that being said, obviously Rico Henry played 45 minutes in a behind closed doors friendly the other day. So that's him hopefully coming back sharpish. God knows when that'll actually happen. And we know that Aya could do a job at right back as well. But obviously because we've had no fullbacks, Aya's been playing left back and Sepp has had to step in at right back. So I think the sooner Rico can come back and, fingers crossed, he's the player that we know he can be, I can step back to right back and do the job that we know he could do. I just felt like Sepp struggled a lot in this game against a wide set team.
He's Aya's a centre back too, but Sepp's not. He's not as obvious. You can't make that shift to right back as seamlessly as Aya would because he's not got Aya's blistering pace. And I feel like that was going down.
So I just wonder, because we've criticised him in the past, but I remember there's certain games, especially against some of the Big Six at times, Mazroslev has defensively done a good job against certain players like this. So I wonder whether we could have brought him on earlier when we saw that Sepp was clearly struggling. And I know going forward, we've criticised Roslev particularly in terms of his, crossing and his interplay, but in that stage of the game when we were so clearly struggling, we were so clearly backs against the wall and obviously Sepp's out of position. I wonder whether he could have come on a bit earlier and maybe done a job. He is at least a fullback He knows the position, and he defensively at times, I think some of his best games for Brentford have been against the big six and have been against obviously elite wingers, who mostly are on the attack for most of the game because we're under the cosh.
Yeah, who would have thought the day would come that we're asking for Mazrasalem to be brought onto the pitch?
Well, Callum, I was stood next to Callum for this game. Obviously, stood in front of you, Mike. But Callum actually said, "Do you think we should bring Roslev on to support Brentford out here?" And now he's not here, so
Yeah, I know. Oh well, it was definitely a problem. I think we're going to talk about the subs and how maybe they could have come on earlier. But just before that, second goal I thought was very, very sloppy, and it's not the first time Collins has to do better for a clearance for me. I think we spoke about him in the Wolves game, Craig. He had an opportunity to clear that goal. I think maybe their second goal that day. But I want to focus on Collins against Hojlund because I was watching that back, and even at the game, I thought, Craig, that was probably the best performance from a centre forward that we've had against us this season. Even in the first half, Hojlund, I don't think had a bad touch. Genuinely, there was one highlight where he Cruyff turns Collins, who gets tight to him near the halfway line, and he just absolutely leaves him for dead.
Yep.
But I know that like the evidence in terms of Hojlund this season, because he's only just come back from injury, maybe we didn't identify him as the danger man that he would be. But you would think Thomas Frank, being Danish, he'd know the quality of that striker. United paid 70 million for him, but I do think maybe that was a battle that Collins lost on Saturday, Craig.
I mean, it's not his first season in English football. We know what he's like. We played against him last season as well, and I'm certain that he actually scored against us. No, it was Mason Mount, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Mason Mount that scored at the G-Tech. It's not his first season in English football. He's been identified before, and maybe we didn't expect him to be back as soon as he was for this game, so we didn't prep well enough. But we know what Collins is like. He didn't have a bad game. Let's just put it out there that Collins didn't have a bad game. He just got beaten by a striker with like the pedigree of striker that it is. I mean, happened to Pinnock against Haaland. It's happened to Collins against Hojlund. It's those names, isn't it? It's just it's just one of those things, and I think Collins has performed well enough actually up to this point that we can give him some slack. And
he's got credit.
Last season, he would have been given a lot more grief than what he is being given. Well, he doesn't deserve any grief because he has been really good up to this point, but. He can't let that get to him. And this Saturday is a really good opportunity for us to just bounce back and turn it around. Yeah,
for sure. I think, especially in that second half, we talk about it in a little bit of detail, but I felt like we just kind of ran out of ideas, Dan. There wasn't much to talk about. I think we only had 2 shots on goal, neither were on target. Fabio has a half chance at the end, but even from watching that back, it wasn't a great effort. No. Should we just move on? We could move on to some player focuses because obviously I think the big conversation to have is about Schade. That's what everyone was talking about sort of after the game. We've spoken about him before in terms of where his best position is, and we've all kind of said that it's definitely on the wing and not as a centre forward. But I do think, Dan, he is becoming a bit of a scapegoat. That, the kind of collective groans you hear when players give the ball away, they're always the loudest for the scapegoats of the team. And I feel like it was Mads when he was in the team. And now it's Schade because it wasn't his best game. He obviously misses that chance in the 3rd minute, but he's playing out of position, Dan, is he not?
Yes, and I don't really think we should be putting him in that position, in all honesty. I think, like I said, Carvalho down the middle, or even Brian down the middle, and shift someone like Schade out to the right. I think Brian is the best finisher we have available. Obviously, I know Wissa's coming back now, so it's likely not to be an issue, but I think Brian is the best finisher we have available if Wissa's out. So there's an argument to put him down the middle. I still think he can impact the game. And I think Schade on the right and KLP on the left, or the other way around, is more likely to be something that we'll see Kevin Schade, excel a bit more, maybe. I think there's a danger of him. I don't want him to be like the next Adama Traore, where he's just that guy with the engine. And obviously he can clearly... The reason he's in a lot of these positions is because he's so quick in the first place. Like, he wouldn't get into these positions and he wouldn't get into these situations if he didn't have that initial burst of pace to get around the defender. But I do think sometimes he's a bit quick for his own good. I think he needs to just refine his technical ability. Obviously, he's still a very young player. So unlike Adama Traore, I don't think all is lost just yet. I think he obviously just needs a run of form. I mean, go back to last season, that goal against Palace at home. He's got quality. That was a really good goal that day. And obviously he got injured shortly after that. So he's got the quality. I think times like this is when he probably needs the support more than ever. I think what I kind of do want him to see is have a few games off the bench. I think introducing him fresh after about an hour, that's not what defenders of the other team's going to want to see because of how quick he is. And they're obviously tiring by that stage of the game. The game will open up a bit more. I think you can get him behind. He'll be fresher. So his touch as well might be a little bit better at that stage of the game. And I do think, say KLP gets an hour on the left, he gets the last half an hour. I do think that will work for him. And equally, we can still see him hopefully growing confidence by doing that. So I think, yeah, just take him out the fire line for next week. I think it's a clear thing that we can do now Wissa's back. So I would just switch him, I think. And I've still got hope for him. I haven't given up on him, but we do need to see him return to even somewhat what he was like towards the end of last season, and obviously before his injury as well, when he was starting to grow into the team.
Craig, have you seen enough? Have you seen enough? I feel like there was a lot of people I saw. I could have bookmarked for Tweet of the Week, but I didn't because I knew we were going to have a big conversation about Schade. I didn't. But the jury was out a little bit for him post United, and there was, to be fair, even after Wolves. I mean, the chances that he missed against Wolves, people were saying that he's not cut out for it. But I'm very much on the same wavelength as Dan in terms of I think there is definitely a player in there, but confidence is obviously a big thing with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of going to go the other direction. So what Dan's gone is I would actually start him against Ipswich because I think they've got some injury problems at the moment to the point that Dara Schade, who obviously we were interested in the summer, is playing as a fullback for them at the moment as well. So that's a player playing out of position that we should be able to exploit, and we need to give him an opportunity to exploit players that are playing out of position. And if there is I shouldn't say that because obviously then it'll come around to bite me in the backside if I say if there's a team to do it against. If we take him out, for me, that will do more damage than good because it will just knock his confidence. He already looks like a player with no confidence, and if we take him out, it's just gonna knock him further, I think, because it just shows that there is no trust or no belief in him, what he's doing as a striker. With that being said, he is not a striker. Do not play him centre forward. Now that Wissa is back, we go back to what we've been doing before with Brian on one side, Schade on the other, and Wissa through the middle. Do not play Schade as a centre forward. If he plays as centre forward, he stinks. Play him out wide. Let him run at players. He has to be able to get up some speed and run at people. And through the middle, he never has an opportunity to do that. He has to start wide, give him a chance, give him a few more games. And if it doesn't work, then when we get like Thiago back, for example, I say back. When we get Thiago in, whichever way we're going to look at it, then the situation changes. And when we get Gustavo Nunes back in, whatever we're going to go with again, the situation changes once more. So unfortunately, he might get pushed down the pecking order when these players are fit. And well, I was going to mention KLP, but Thomas Frank never kind of really changes that front three if he doesn't have to. When we've got limited options. So I imagine it will be front three of Schade and Bueno and Wissa. I hope Wissa starts again because I think we've really missed him actually since he's been out these few games.
Yeah, for sure. Through the middle, I think definitely. I think Schade, you're right, Danny. He's got bags of pace and he's getting into these positions, and it's similar to like how Hojlund. He's obviously not on the same level as Hojlund, but Hojlund uses his pace so well because he knows that he's got 5 yards on anyone from starting position, and his movement is just elite. But Schade is getting into similar positions. I mean, for the chance he had in the 3rd minute, he's getting into those positions. So he's definitely got some sort of striker instincts to a certain extent, but he's just at the moment just in front of goal, just like that. The chance in the 3rd minute just stunk of someone who has absolutely no confidence. I mean, the ball. If that was Brian in that position, you could imagine, because even against West Ham, we set up and we thought that it would be Schade through the middle, but it was actually Schade down the right, and Brian and Schade were really close together. if Brian was in that position, it's a volley in the box, and we know what happens. We're 1-0 up in the 3rd minute. So
he's kind of giving me shades of finally I should use that word, shades of Darwin Núñez's first like 6 months at Liverpool, where he could not find the back of the net for any reason. So, you know, not that he's Darwin Núñez's level either, you know, but it happens to players at top clubs. And Hojlund has dropped 2 stinkers in a row as well, by the way. So
3
stinkers in a row. 3 stinkers in a row. So let's just hope that once he gets that goal, once he gets up and running, I think once he gets a bit of confidence, we'll see a different type of player. But it's just when that goal comes, do you know what he really needs? He needs a really, really crap goal. He needs a really crap goal. The one that springs to mind is like the one that Wissa scored against Palace, the winner that Wissa scored against Palace, where Collins scuffs it and Henderson makes the save and pushes it into Wissa. That's a really crap goal. And Schade just needs something to break for him, for his confidence to just come up a little bit. And then things will start, you know, hopefully start getting a bit better and getting a bit bigger for him. But he needs a crap goal to score.
Yeah, for sure. I think don't lose the face in the Schade. I think there is definitely a player in there. Let's talk about some other players. Damsgaard, again, I think our best player on the pitch. He's so great in those little half spaces in between the lines of the defence and the midfield. United's defence and midfield, I should say. He is just getting better and better. And obviously, I think Thomas Frank actually came out, Dan, and said in his post match that it probably wasn't he wasn't as good against United as he was against Wolves. But still, the confidence at the moment is just surging through him. Whenever he has the ball, he's so adept now at picking up the ball and getting past the man, which is something we really didn't see at all during his first kind of season at the club, partly because of injuries and partly because when he came on, he just looks really rusty. But again, he just looks so impressive and kind of a level above any other of our players, I thought, on the pitch against United on Saturday. It looked like he was maybe that's why he came out and did the post-match, because he thought, you know what, I've got nothing to be ashamed about in that performance. I think he was kind of the talisman. If we were going to create anything in that second half, it was going to come through him. But talk to me about Damsgaard, Dan. Another really impressive performance from him.
Yeah, I really like him. And if Schade's watching how he's getting on, obviously this is what confidence can do. Because obviously Damsgaard's, you know, took a little while to get going at Brentford, obviously mixture of injury issues as well. Another assist at the weekend, so his numbers are starting to follow now, certainly in terms of assists. It's another good delivery for the corner. Yeah, and I think the biggest compliment again is we haven't really missed Jensen in his absence. I think it's rumoured that Jensen may return next week, but I can't see how Thomas Frank can drop him for Jensen. I'd maybe drop Yanelt for Jensen, but that's a different conversation. I think, yeah, he's got to be one of the first names on the team sheet now. He's got to be exceeding on the same level as Norgard, I think, in terms of having that starting role in the midfield three, which is, you know, brilliant for him. We said when we had about 10 games left last season and he started to start regularly that he needed to take the chance. I think he was pretty good last season. I think he's gone up another level this season. And now he is one of the first names on the team sheet. And we spent, 20 million on him a couple of years ago now, and it didn't look like it was going to pay off. But now, you know, it's taken a couple of years, but it really is paying off. And it's nice to see some of our recruitment in the Premier League. Was obviously Nathan Collins improving this season as well. It's nice to see that recruitment finally paying off, even if it takes a little while to adapt to the Premier League and to meet the levels that we need.
Yeah, just some goals, I think, now for him. Added the assist, just needs to add some goals. KLP, unusually quiet. We could talk about that a little bit if you want, Craig. You mentioned Dalot being on the yellow card, and I think there was maybe one instance in the first half where KLP got away from him, and all the others, we would kind of, I mean, we've seen from KLP in the past his ability to get at fullbacks and run at them and make them make a decision and either get past them or get across in. But for whatever reason on Saturday, he was, considering how lively he's been in the last few games, and granted he's not had the assists and the goals to kind of reflect that in the stats, but just from the eye test, I think he's been a pretty ever-present threat throughout sort of his time at left wing back / left wing. So he looked uncharacteristically sort of not busy at the weekend, Craig.
Yeah, players had that though, didn't they? Every player has that. So like you said, he's been a bright spark in the team, which have been really good as well. So there's take nothing away from him as well. Same sort of comments as to what I said about Collins. Is every player has these games, don't they? So I wouldn't take too much away from it. But I think that we need to just exploit teams. We need to get into a position where we can exploit players and teams for having yellow cards. Use it to our advantage. And there are so many times in which we haven't done that. And that's one thing that needs to change. I would like to see him given opportunities a bit further forward again. But then I kind of end up contradicting myself in saying, who does he come in for? Does he come in for Schade, or you can't drop Brian? You can't drop Brian, which means there's only one person that he comes in for, and that's Schade. And the problem is we need to give Schade an opportunity to play in his natural position out wide rather than through the middle. Now Wissa is back again, and hope that he picks himself up and dusts himself off and goes again. But he has to know that KLP is after that spot as well. So maybe a bit of competition would be good for Schade. Maybe a bit of competition would be good for him.
Yeah, for sure. I think just concluding remarks on the United game. Obviously, I tweeted out we're kind of slipping into familiar habits. 11 points dropped from winning positions this season, I believe, is a league high. Obviously, 3 of those came against United, Spurs and City, with the other being West Ham when we ended up drawing. Concluding thoughts, Dan, with that stat just thrown at you.
I think it certainly doesn't help the fact that obviously the City and the Spurs goals were so early, and naturally away at those kind of places too, it is more likely that you'll drop points on winning positions if you're scoring inside 30 minutes away at the Etihad. So 30 seconds, sorry, at the Etihad. I think in that sense, maybe the stats are overinflated, but this is a problem that also dates back to last season. So it's not just the fact that we're scoring in the first 30 seconds against top teams. So it is a bit of a concern. Obviously, we seem to get bogged down into periods of games where we're not up to the level. And if it's just a 15, 20-minute period, we still tend to get punished, if not once, twice or more in that period. And obviously at the weekend, it was the beginning of the second half for the first 15, 20 minutes. And that's a problem. We've got to maintain our levels. We've got to maybe adapt a bit quicker when it's not quite going our way, and change things a bit quicker before it's too late, before we're behind, and then we decide to change things. I think maybe that could be slightly sharper and slightly better. And it's got to be an emphasis on maintaining our performance throughout the game. And I get it's a bit harder trying to play out from the back and the way we're trying to play this season, but it's something that needs to be worked on. Even against Wolves, we did obviously win quite well in the end, but we went 1-0 up, then they came back, then we went 2-1 up, then they came back. So it wasn't like we were ahead throughout. They did peg us back a couple of times. So it is something we definitely need to work on, in terms of just, keeping stuck at the task, no matter what the score is, just maintain your performance.
On to Ipswich, Craig. I think, a chance to bounce back. Home form's going to be key. They've just lost 2-0 at home to Everton. What's the message from Thomas Frank ahead of it? I think you mentioned you'd like to see Wiss back in the starting 11.
Yeah, I think I'd make 3 changes myself. Going into this one, I'd make 3 changes. But yeah, Wissa through the middle. I'd like to see him back through the middle. Give him a chance to get back into the swing of things, and being at home, playing at home with our home form probably is the best opportunity for Wissa to come back into it. I think this is an opportunity for us to attack a bit more. So I would put Carvalho in midfield instead of Janelt. So I'd go for a midfield 3 of Norgard, Damsgaard, and Fab in there. But I'd give Sepp a break. He's playing out of position. He's played these last few games out of position, especially considering he played away at United now. He's played away at City in that position, and Wolves and West Ham. I'd give him a little break. Let Roslev come back in. And knowing that we've got a bit of a defensive depth on the bench, we can change it, bring Sepp on for Roslev if need be. But it's a really, really good opportunity for us to bounce back. And I think that 3 points is really important for us.
Dan, what are you thinking?
I'd also make 3 changes, but I would probably leave Sepp in No, I wouldn't make 3 changes actually. It would only be 2 changes. But I would have KLP on the left ahead of Schade, and Schade to come on with 30 minutes left. I think he's still going to get game time. I think, he's well aware that KLP plays in the same position as him, and I think he'll probably accept that KLP's outperformed him slightly in the last few games. And I also think if you want one to come on with 30 minutes left, I'd probably prefer Schade given his pace and what he could do to a team when they're tiring. So I'd have KLP on the left, obviously Whistler up front, Brian on the right. The only other thing, Jensen could be back, but I don't expect him to be fit enough to play 90 minutes, and it wouldn't even surprise me if he doesn't quite make it at all, given our recent record. So I wouldn't rush to have him back in. I think the fact that Damsgaard's done so well means that we don't necessarily need to rush him back in. I like the fact of Damsgaard being in perhaps a deeper role like he was, I think, against West Ham, to allow Carvalho to maybe be that more attacking number 10. And obviously Norgard to shore it up, I think, is a good option as well.
It should be a fairly routine home 3 points. I say that now. But considering, I think I was a little bit cautious about the Wolves game because they played really well. And I think Ipswich have shown in spurts that they can play well this season. But having lost 2-0 at home to Everton last time out, it is what I mean. We've been really kind in terms of the fixture list and in terms of the teams we've played at home so far. With West Ham being the only one we haven't won in, but it should be a fairly routine victory. Yes, Craig is touching the wood. Yes, please. But we're going to come out with a more in-depth preview of Ipswich during the week with an Ipswich fan. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. And also the tactical breakdown to come on my channel. The link for that will be in the description, going over the United game and also looking forward to the Ipswich game as well. Remember to drop a comment down below. How do you feel after the United game? Was it an opportunity missed? Will we see Kevin Schade get to the levels that we kind of paid for him, I guess? We paid a lot of money for him. Do we think that he's got room to improve, or is the jury out on him? Let us know in the comment section down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials at The Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, Craig, it's been a pleasure as always.
Up the bees.
Up the bees.